Discover the incredible moment a waitress transforms a millionaire's mockery into $5,000 and hope. Sarah stood behind the counter of the diner, a warm smile plastered on her face as another regular ordered their favorite. The sweet smell of cinnamon rolls mingled with the rich aroma of brewing coffee, a comfort she clung to fiercely. This place was her sanctuary, the fond laughter and everyday banter a soothing refrain to her weary mind. At 32, the weight of being a single mother to two energetic children rested heavy on her shoulders. Each plate she served, each cup she poured, was a step toward a better life for them. But that day, the air shifted and everything changed. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked Tom, a businessman straight from a glossy magazine, all polished shoes and confidence. He sauntered to a booth, waving off the bustle around him as if it were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. When he opened the menu, a wide grin spread across his face. "Oh, look at these prices! Do you expect people to pay this much for grease on a plate?" He laughed, the sound slicing into Sarah's heart. The giggles of nearby patrons echoed in her ears, their amusement a painful reminder of the financial burdens she faced daily. Swallowing hard, she felt a rush of shame creep up her spine. Was her struggle that transparent? The laughter of the diners, usually warm, now felt like daggers aimed squarely at her dignity. Yet her loyal customers, especially Mr. Jenkins, an elderly man with kind eyes, offered silent support. He sipped his coffee quietly, eyes narrowing at Tom's taunts. They had shared stories of resilience over countless cups, and here she was, ready to crumble under a stranger's mockery. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. What if I just stood up to him? The thought flickered through Sarah's mind, both terrifying and exhilarating. The idea weighed heavy yet liberating, but fear held her back. What if she lost her job? What if the townsfolk turned against her? These questions buzzed like a swarm of bees, stinging her resolve. The pressure mounted as Tom nonchalantly picked at his food, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing in her heart. As the lunch rush slowed, Sarah drew in a deep breath, her heart racing. She couldn't let this moment slip away. She squared her shoulders and approached his table, determination coiling tight within her chest. "Excuse me," her voice trembled but carried a steel she had to grasp tightly. "We all have our struggles, some more visible than others." Tom raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The tension in the diner thickened, the hum of conversation ebbing into an uneasy silence, eyes focusing on the unfolding drama. But before she could finish, anger mixed with despair bubbled in her throat, choking the words she so desperately wanted to say. Would it change anything? Her dignity remained fragile, a porcelain egg teetering on the edge of a knife. Would confronting him help her children? Or would she only be left with the ashes of her pride, a single mother fighting a losing battle? The possibilities whispered. A brighter future, a life without fear or uncertainty, inches beyond reach. In that moment, an unshakable certainty gripped her. She was at a crossroads, and the choice ahead demanded everything. How would she move forward without losing herself, her dignity, her children's hopes? The world outside the diner felt vast and unwelcoming, but inside, the weight of expectation loomed greater than ever. With hearts racing and hope hanging delicately in the balance, Sarah faced the looming dilemma. her thoughts swirling into a dizzying spiral. What fate awaited her as she turned back toward the bustling community that watched, breath held, and eyes wide? The room seemed to shrink as Sarah stood before Tom, the air around her thick with anticipation. The inquisitive stares of her patrons bore down on her like a spotlight demanding a performance. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, a primal reminder of the stakes involved. She wanted to assert herself, to reclaim the narrative that Tom had so carelessly mocked. "Please, I need you to understand," she pressed on, trying to harness the burgeoning strength within her. "This diner isn't just a place for people to eat. It's where we share our lives, our stories." She gestured to a few tables. "Each person here has faced their own battles, the choice to pay the bills or buy a birthday cake, for instance. We're all in this together." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms, the smirk slipping from his face. For a fleeting moment, she saw confusion wash over him, a flicker of recognition. Perhaps he hadn't expected a response, least of all from a waitress. The silence hung heavy, and Sarah could feel her resolve teetering. Yet, anchored by the knowing gaze of Mr. Jenkins, who momentarily set his coffee cup down, she pressed on. "I work every day, juggling responsibilities, just like the rest of you. We deserve respect." As she spoke, something remarkable began to shift inside her. This wasn't just about defending her position. It was about reclaiming her identity, her purpose. With each word, she was untangling the remnants of her shame and weaving them into a cloak of resilience. The diner remained still, the occupants unwilling to break the electric charge that had formed. Tom's expression morphed from disdain to annoyance.
"And what do you want for that speech? A medal?" "Not a medal," Sarah responded, her voice steadier now, each syllable carrying the weight of her truth. "Just a bit of understanding would be nice. Maybe a willingness to see the value in what you consider grease on a plate." She could see a flicker of realization in the eyes of the other diners, seeds of change being planted even in that moment. The tension loosened slightly, and she felt a swell of warmth bubble up within her. For the first time in years, she felt emboldened, allowing the confrontation to crack open her own limitations. "Look," Tom scoffed, though a hint of hesitance laced his words. "I didn't come here to make enemies. It's just a joke, business as usual." But Sarah quickly countered. "And yet, your jokes carry weight. It's easy to take potshots from a pedestal, blind to the lives being impacted below." For the first time, his facade faltered, revealing traces of vulnerability. Perhaps he was beginning to understand the gravity of his words. As the dynamic shifted, a part of Sarah felt liberated, each syllable expanding her sense of self-worth. Here in the diner, within the constraints of her apron and cap, she was more than a waitress. She was a voice rising above ridicule, a defender of dignity. With a deep breath, she turned away from Tom and faced the collective gaze of the diners, a moment suspended in time. She spoke, letting the words flow freely. "If my family and I must navigate this world, we deserve to do so with dignity." The murmurs began to circulate among the patrons, a new wave of solidarity blossoming. As she returned to the counter, adrenaline coursed through her veins, a potent mix of anxiety and accomplishment. There was still a long way to go, and her battle against preconceived notions had perhaps just begun. Sarah found Mr. Jenkins' eyes again, his smile now encouraging. No longer was she the quiet waitress recoiling from disdain. She had become a catalyst for change, aware that each challenge was a step toward redefining her life. And as she poured a fresh cup of coffee, she mused about how one moment could initiate a ripple effect, sweeping across her community, a change inspired by love, struggle, and the fierce desire to rise up. Yet there remained a question lingering like an unturned stone. What more could she discover within herself as she navigated this new chapter of truth and courage? The diner's door creaked open again, and Sarah turned to see yet another stranger stepping through, their face unreadable. Was this a new challenge or an opportunity? The door swung wider, and a gust of wind swept into the diner, carrying the faint scent of rain and uncertainty. Sarah felt her heart quicken again, aware that this moment could either nourish her newfound resolve or threaten to unravel it. The figure who entered was tall and slightly disheveled, with a worn leather jacket draped over their shoulders and a look that mirrored the crowd's initial skepticism. For a second, Sarah stared, the residual tension from her earlier confrontation still lingering in the air. Her instincts warned her to remain cautious, but she couldn't ignore the flicker of curiosity ignited within her. Who was this stranger, and what weight did they bear? "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice firm yet tinged with the vulnerability of her recent revelations. The stranger glanced around, their eyes scanning the diner before settling on her. "I heard this place had the best coffee in town, but I suppose I should qualify that. Best for the price." There was a hint of playfulness laced in their tone, but it felt like a thin veneer over deeper issues. "Coffee's always complimentary with a good story," Sarah replied, recalling how her experiences had transformed simple exchanges into shared narratives. This time, it felt different, more of an invitation than a transaction. The stranger smirked, hinting at an understanding of the way Sarah had just commandeered the atmosphere. "All right, my name's Alex. I'm currently trying to navigate this crazy city with all its ups and downs. A millionaire go-broke story, if you want the short version." Something about Alex's words resonated with her. Here was someone who, like herself, was grappling with a story of loss and reinvention. "As long as the story comes with a side of pancakes," she replied lightly, her own confidence buoyed by their shared recognition of life's absurdities. When Alex chuckled, Sarah felt a spark of connection that felt refreshing amidst the recent chaos. She moved to get their order, but as she did, her mind swirled with assessments. This moment could be an opportunity, another chance to solidify her own voice and examine her potential to inspire resilience. "So, what brings you to a diner like this?" she asked, leaning against the counter while preparing their coffee. "Desperation, mostly," Alex admitted, their eyes flickering with emotion. "But it's a two-way street. I can't help feeling like if I'm forced to start over, I'd rather do it authentically." That word, authentically, resonated deeply within her. She felt sparks of her own truth igniting. Authenticity can be hard to find, especially when the world wants to define you by your failures, she said, recalling her earlier confrontation with Tom. Exactly. It's like the narrative people project on you becomes an anchor dragging you down. Alex's honesty felt tethered to that collective struggle she had glimpsed in the diner earlier. They exchanged stories, weaving a tapestry of hardship, ambition, and resilience, moment by moment. As Sarah listened, she felt her spirits surge, not just from sharing her struggles, but because she was invested in someone else's journey as well. Then, as if struck by a thunderbolt, an idea crystallized.
What if we turned this narrative around? What if this diner became a platform for our stories? A place where real-life struggles sparkle with hope and inspiration? Alex's brows furrowed in thought. "You mean like a community storytelling night?" "Yes!" Her voice erupted with excitement. "But not just stories. What if we tied them to actions? Each month, we could raise funds to help struggling folks, turning narratives into something that changes lives." The weight of her words hung in the air, reverberating with possibility. Could she really be part of something transformative? A partnership forging a path from their vulnerabilities to collective action? As Sarah's heart raced with potential, she felt an electrifying buzz course through her. It was more than a mere idea. It was a vision of empowerment she hadn't known existed within her. Alex's expression shifted, recognition lighting up their face. "You know, that just might work. But you're the one who'd need to lead it. You have the passion, I can tell. What if this was her moment? A crossroads between doubt and courage, an opportunity to further reclaim her narrative not just for herself, but for others who felt lost. Before she could answer, a distant voice echoed through the diner, breaking her reverie. "Hey, Sarah, how about those eggs?" With a jolt back to reality, the diner felt alive around her. The unfolding transformation that had begun with Tom was gaining momentum, and Sarah could no longer pretend she wasn't ready to embrace it. As she moved to fulfill the customer's order, a mix of trepidation and exhilaration surged within her. No longer merely a waitress, she was a facilitator of stories, of connections, and perhaps even of real hope. But as she turned toward Alex again, they offered one last question. "Are you really ready to step up and lead this change?" Sarah paused, the weight of the inquiry thick in the air, her heart pounding against the idea of what truly lay ahead. Was she prepared to transform her newfound voice into action? The answer was brewing within, but before she could voice it, a crashing sound erupted from the kitchen, a clear warning that the path forward would not be without its obstacles. Sarah's pulse raced, the unexpected noise dragging her back into the tangible chaos of the diner. The sound of shattering glass vibrated across the tiled floor, sending patrons' heads turning and murmurs rippling through the crowd. It was a stark reminder that life was messy, unpredictable, and often far from the organized narrative she envisioned for herself. "Just a second," she called over her shoulder, her eyes darting to the kitchen door where the frantic movements of her coworker indicated distress. The momentary connection with Alex felt suspended as reality encroached, demanding immediate attention. She moved swiftly behind the counter, forcing herself to concentrate. "What happened?" she asked, steadiness replacing the adrenaline coursing through her. Her instincts had taken over, guiding her toward resolution, away from self-doubt. "Everything just slipped. Megan was trying to carry too much," her friend replied, crouched low, frantically picking up pieces of broken plates. Sarah's heart sank. How far did she have to stretch herself before she could fully embrace this leadership role? It was easy to dream up ambitious ideas when she was wrapped in possibilities, but moments like this forced her back into reality. She couldn't let chaos deter her. "Okay, listen, let's clear this up and then we can catch our breath. I'll get the broom and help," she said while grabbing a dustpan and moving into action, driven by an urgency to maintain the balance of the diner. As she worked, Sarah's mind darted back to Alex's question. Was she ready to lead? With every shatter of the plates and every broken promise in her life, she felt the weight of expectation setting in. A flicker of determination surged through her. If she wanted to lead, she needed to demonstrate her capability, right now, not just in the abstract future. Once the mess was cleared, she straightened and wiped her hands on her apron. "Looks like we survived the dinner bell," she quipped to Megan, who offered a relieved smile. But the thoughts about Alex and their ambitious idea loomed large. She scanned the diner where customers resumed their meals, seemingly unaware of the near-miss disaster. The ordinary backdrop of greasy menus and casual chatter now felt surreal against her burgeoning aspirations. "Hey, Sarah," Alex interrupted her thoughts, leaning casually against the counter, arms folded. "You didn't flinch back there. Doesn't that speak volumes to your potential?" His observation hung in the air like a challenge. She could feel the weight of his gaze, encouraging yet probing. Recently, she had tiptoed around her own capabilities, hesitant to confront the deeper truths of her skill set. But each challenge she faced, every skirmish with broken glass or hasty decisions, etched new layers into her identity. "I guess it does," she said, letting a hint of a smile breach her lips. "So what's the first step? I can't make this change alone, and if we're going to truly inspire, I have to learn how to actually lead it." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Accountability begins with you. Start with forms of connection, even among ourselves. Maybe we can tackle our first story together. You lead it, and I'll back you up as the support."
Determination coursed through her. She perked up, feeling the vigor of her own aspirations pressing against the barrier of her fears. "Let's start with our stories then," she declared, the words tasting like renewal. But before they could delve deeper, Tom sauntered back into the diner, his arrival sending chills down her spine. His presence hadn't diminished, and now, with this new venture on the horizon, she couldn't afford to let past interactions dictate her quest for authenticity. "Back again?" He smirked, taunting. The casual indifference of his tone felt like an icy grip around Sarah's resolve. A deep breath prepared her. It was time to confront not just Tom, but the old Sarah, who was easily intimidated. She felt the foundation of her self-worth teetering, itching for acknowledgement. "Yes, I'm here, and I'm planning something big," she stated firmly, each word bolstered by her intention. The challenge rang in the air, a verbal contract that called out for implications she was unsure she could manage. Yet she had stepped into this moment intending to reclaim her narrative. "Really?" Tom raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering across his face. "What's that? More tales from your humble little corner of the world?" The mocking tone lit a fire inside her, bringing forth the very potential she had sought to reveal. "Not just tales, Tom," Sarah gestured toward the other patrons, newfound confidence solidifying her stance. "Actions tied to our stories. A chance for everyone in this diner to see that they matter." His challenge didn't deter her. It became fuel, layering urgency onto her budding mission. As the weight of both Tom's cynicism and her aspirations hung thickly in the air, Sarah felt the inkling of clarity. This was the moment, a collision course between doubt and determined ambition. Would she crumble under the weight of a past she wished to escape, or would she stand firm and reshape her reality? In that split second, as recognition sparked between them, the diner felt electric with more than just the fumes of frying bacon. It was charged with possibility, and Sarah knew, from here on out, a reckoning awaited. Was she prepared to confront the obstacles ahead, not only from the outside, but from herself? The clatter of silverware and the rhythmic swish of the diner's door set the backdrop for the intensity blooming around Sarah. Her heart beat against the walls of expectation she had unknowingly built. Tom's sardonic grin hadn't dissipated, and now it mirrored a challenge she could no longer sidestep. She had only one option: to claim her narrative. "What's big?" he pressed, leaning against the counter as if he were the judge of her next move, an insufferable grin frozen on his lips. The pressure from his presence squeezed at her resolve, but somewhere beneath the surface, determination surged. "Something that matters," she replied, projecting a steadiness she barely felt. Each word was a tightrope she walked carefully, but it was time to balance grace with grit. Before Tom could counter, Alex interjected, bringing a shift in the dynamic. "How about you show us what you've got?" His enthusiasm seemed to shine through the tension, offering a lifeline that reassured Sarah. "What if we challenge ourselves to tell a story that resonates with the people here?" "Exactly," she affirmed, emboldened by Alex's faith in her. "Let's dig deep, find those moments of connection, not just for us, but for everyone who walks through that door." Tom, unyielding and unimpressed, paused to let out a dismissive chuckle. "You really think your little stories can reach anyone? People come here to eat, not to hear some sob story from a waitress." The mockery stung, but beneath it, she sensed a flicker of truth. Yes, people came to eat, but they also sought connection, understanding, and even inspiration in unexpected places. What if that's exactly why it will work? Sarah countered, her voice firm. A story isn't just a narrative, it's a thread that connects us, and everyone here has one. With her words hanging in the air, she felt the glares of the surrounding patrons shifting toward her. Some studied her with curious eyes, while others went back to their meals, yet Sarah could see the hints of interest flickering within them. A story isn't just for the audience, it's an opportunity for everyone involved, she continued, her mind racing with ideas. What if we hold a story day here? Allow people to share their experiences. We write them down, compile a book, dive into our memories, our lives, and share that with the community. Tom's expression faltered momentarily. The smirk vanished, replaced by an incredulous look that ignited a tentative confidence within her. In that fragile moment, she realized her assertion transcended mere words. It was her stepping stone toward leadership. Who knows, she added, stoking the fire with her enthusiasm. Maybe the right story can change someone's life. And if we promote it, we could raise funds for local organizations, make a genuine impact while bringing this place alive. She could almost hear the gears shifting within herself. Thoughts transformed into approach, each articulated intention erasing the vestiges of self-doubt. Alex nodded along, eyes sparkling with approval. Or, Tom interjected, a hint of annoyance creeping back, you might just find yourself overwhelmed. You already seem on the brink of managing this place. Who's going to back your pipe dream? That's just it, Tom, Sarah held her ground, rooted firmly in the moment. This isn't just about me. It's an entire community effort. I will lead, and I can ask others to join, and we won't be doing it alone. The words felt powerful, igniting a warmth within her, evidence of the potential she wanted and now felt more than ready to embrace. She believed in community, in connection. Now it was more than just an affirmation. It was a commitment single-handedly inspired by her desire to grow. "Count me in," Alex spoke up, mirroring her resolve. "Me too," chimed in Megan from behind the counter, eyes brightening. It was a ripple effect. Others began to nod, and the air thickened with possibilities. Against Tom's caustic doubt, Sarah's newfound ambition expanded, carving its place firmly in the diner's fabric. But as the glimmer of hope took root, Sarah understood that momentum was key in sustaining this change. It brought a weight of expectation she had to uphold. What if the stories fell flat? What if she couldn't navigate the tides of both her aspirations and Tom's negativity? Before she could dwell further on her fears, she felt an avalanche of responsibility crash over her. The challenge had morphed into real stakes, and now she needed to execute a plan, figure out how to best empower others and bring their stories to life. Would she channel this energy into something transformative? Would she withstand the scrutiny, not just from Tom, but from her own inner saboteur? As the clinking of glasses and sizzling from the kitchen faded into a distant murmur, one thing became clear. Her journey had truly begun. All she had to do was take the first bold step forward. Yet, as she gathered her thoughts, Sarah recognized the part of her life where fear reigned was slowly dissipating. But would it be enough to nurture the strong leader she knew she could become? What awaited her was the biggest storytelling challenge of all, one that could alter not just her life, but others around her forever. The next morning dawned with a clarity that felt foreign, yet invigorating. As Sarah stepped into the diner, the familiar clamor of plates and laughter filled her with a strange blend of anticipation and dread. The weight of her aspirations rested heavy on her shoulders, each heartbeat a reminder that today was pivotal. Her resolve was steadfast. She had to turn her vision into reality. The booth that had felt stifling just days ago now felt like a launching pad, a space where her ideas could take flight. She felt different, more attuned to herself, the whims of fear now replaced with determination.
"All right, let's get this show on the road," she murmured under her breath as she gathered the scattered tables and chairs, envisioning them not just occupied by patrons, but by stories waiting to be told. "Hey, Sarah," called Alex, snapping her from her thoughts. His voice was bright with a pep that invigorated her. He approached, arms laden with paper and pens. "Got everything you need for the story day?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We need to make it count. I want every table filled with voices. We can showcase a different story each week, build it up from just today." "That's the spirit," he affirmed, conceding a grin. "But tell me, what's your plan for getting everyone involved? Tom's attitude isn't going to change overnight." "We'll start small," Sarah replied, her excitement bubbling into focus. "Everyone has something to share, an experience, a lesson learned, a moment that changed them. I'll approach customers as they arrive, use my rapport to build trust." The thought of creating connections lifted her spirits. Each customer was a universe of stories, and gripping tones of emotion lay just beneath the surface. Yet Tom's voice echoed in her mind, souring the sweet taste of optimism. "What do I do if they don't bite?" she asked Alex, setting her jaw. "Don't let that doubt creep in, Sarah," he advised, clasping her shoulder. "Remember, you've already stirred something in this place. Trust that people want to share, especially during times where connection is scarce." His words breathed life into her dry confidence. She nodded, bolstered by his support, moving toward the first booth as a stream of regulars filtered in. The first table held a couple in their 60s, reminiscing quietly. She stepped closer, heart racing, and introduced herself. "Hey there, I'm working on a special project called Story Day. Would you be willing to share a moment from your life? Something you feel might inspire others?" Their initial skepticism melted as she smiled, weaving her preparations into the conversation. Soon the stories began flowing. A beloved family recipe from the grandmother, hidden struggles from the husband's youth. Each revelation reinforced her purpose and solidified her resolve. However, the lingering shadow of Tom's skepticism prowled in her mind. After finishing her initial rounds amid eager patrons, she found him at the counter, a frown tugging at his lips. Peering over the edge, he couldn't resist the urge to pour ice over her efforts. "Got any real interest yet, or are you still peddling dreams?" he jeered. Fury bubbled within her, a reaction she needed to channel elsewhere. "That's where you're wrong, Tom. Every story shared is a challenge you're too afraid to take on yourself. I don't need your validation to know I'm making a difference," she shot back, her voice steady. "Keep telling yourself that, Sarah," he remarked, but this time his tone transpired as the weary grumble of someone more nervous than indifferent. Tom had inadvertently given her fuel. The friction of their exchanges was perhaps the catalyst for her growth. She could embrace feedback, dismantle doubts. All of it served to fortify her against external and internal obstacles. Rolling up her sleeves, she swung back into the fray. The more stories she collected, the clearer her path became, building a narrative that burrowed into the diner's very essence and perhaps even beyond its doors, changing lives. As the shift wore on, she felt the adrenaline quieting, but the urge to move forward burned fiercely. Increasingly, patrons lingered, sharing and connecting while warmth enveloped the atmosphere. By the end of the shift, Sarah had gathered snippets of lives, pieces she could polish and present, unearthing the hidden depths of all who shared. She stepped out into the brisk evening air, her heart racing in exhilaration. What next? How would she harness that initial courage to navigate through the challenges still looming with Tom's shadowy cynicism? She knew they would confront each other again. Would their dynamic shift, push her further, or drag her down? Today had set a foundation unlike any before, but the real journey lay ahead, and she was ready to confront the storm. Would she be ready for Tom's ultimate challenge? In that moment, she sought clarity in her response. The next chapter beckoned, holding the promise of transformation both for her and the diner itself.
The following day dawned, cloaked in a haze of uncertainty that contrasted sharply with the clarity of yesterday. As Sarah stepped back into the diner's buzzing atmosphere, she could feel the flutter of nerves settling deep in her gut. Yesterday's victories felt distant, an ephemeral taste of success she longed to rekindle. Determined to build on the momentum, she approached each table with renewed intent, her mind racing with fresh ideas for capturing stories. But the heaviness of Tom's earlier skepticism loomed like a persistent shadow, pulling at her confidence. What if her initiative fell flat? What if people were more interested in their meals than sharing their lives? "Get it together, Sarah. Today's about connection," she whispered to herself as she readied her notepad beside the coffee carafe. Her first customer was a young man lost in his phone. She hesitated, contemplating whether to break through his distraction. What if he mocked her quest? But as she inhaled the heady aroma of brewed coffee, she made her move. "Hey there," she started, working up a warm smile. "I'm collecting stories today. Anything special come to mind you'd want to share?" He looked up, eyebrows raised, surprise mingling with curiosity. "Stories? I don't know. I guess I don't have anything exciting." Her listening ear ignited something in him, a flicker of a memory. "Actually," he said, shifting slightly, "my grandfather used to tell me tales about how he started his business from nothing. Kind of a big deal back then in our town." As his narrative unfolded, Sarah felt the stirring excitement that had eluded her upon waking. She scribbled notes as he spoke, each story melding seamlessly into her growing tapestry of experiences that spanned generations. This was her art, an intricate weaving of lives through the diner's windows. Hours flowed by. More and more voices melded into her project, each heartbeat strumming a chord deep within her purpose. Yet, amid the laughter and shared wisdom, a gut-wrenching awareness gripped her. Tom hadn't made an appearance yet, and his absence begged the question of whether he would choose to undermine her now, just as she'd begun to soar. As the afternoon stretched, she noticed him enter through the door, his expression tight in the glare of the diner's fluorescent lights. A tight knot formed in her stomach, but she held tight to her burgeoning resolve. Today she wouldn't falter. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of undermining her efforts. "Hey, Tom," she called out, projecting confidence. "We've got a fantastic collection of stories already today." "Stories, huh?" he replied, seizing the opportunity with a sardonic edge. "I hope you're not expecting that to pay the bills."
The murmurs she noticed among the patrons grew quieter, and for a moment she felt the sting of humiliation creep in, yet she channeled her discomfort into strength. "It might not pay the bills directly, but it feeds the soul, which is maybe more valuable than you think," she shot back. His eyes narrowed slightly, an unspoken challenge sparking between them. "And how's that working out for you? You think this little game will really make an impact?" She knew she could see beyond his facade. "I think you're missing the point. It's about connection. It's about reminding people they're not alone in their struggles. That's worth a lot more, Tom." For a fleeting moment, his stoic demeanor flickered with uncertainty before he clamped it back down. The silence hung like an eerie fog around them. Maybe she'd pierced through his bravado, or maybe she had simply inflamed his animosity. But either way, she felt emboldened, fully aware of the stakes now. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the diner with warm hues, she realized she was transformed, not just by the stories woven into her day, but by her newfound ability to confront those who wielded doubt as a weapon. It was liberating, invigorating, a charge that revitalized her spirit. Just as the thought overtook her mind, a group of excited patrons erupted into applause, recognizing her drive and spirit. She glanced over, and for the first time, she saw genuine interest sparking in Tom's eyes, like a "is this really happening?" moment. What lay ahead? Would she finally face a breakthrough with Tom, or would his critical nature push her to greater heights? With uncertainty swirling, she felt ready to tackle the unknown, for every story she gathered fortified her sense of self. The time had come to face the true test of her resolve. What would she uncover in the battle for validation in the heart of the diner? As the buzz of the diner settled around her, Sarah found herself propelled into an unexpected momentum. The applause still echoed in her ears, a reminder of the unlikely support she had ignited within those walls. This feeling of empowerment swirled within her, blending with the subtle adrenaline of confrontation with Tom. Today wasn't just about stories, it was a reckoning. Determined to keep the energy alive, she turned her attention to the next table. A middle-aged woman sat alone, her brow furrowed in concentration over her meal. Sarah approached, bearing her freshest smile and the weight of a newly discovered confidence. "Hi there, I'm gathering stories today. Do you have a moment to share something special?" The woman looked up, her expression shifting from irritation to mild curiosity. "A story? I guess I could share about my journey to start this little art studio of mine. It wasn't easy, you know." Here it was, the glimmer of connection Sarah craved. Diving into the woman's tale, she felt her heart lighten with every word exchanged. The stories layered upon her, weaving together lives and experiences. Each account seemed to thumb its nose at the skepticism Tom radiated. With every story she gleaned, Sarah felt another piece of herself solidifying. She no longer needed validation. She was creating it. As the lunchtime rush began to wane, she spotted Tom nursing a cup of coffee at the counter, an unreadable expression painting his face. For a moment, doubt gnawed at the edges of her contentment. Was her effort merely a fleeting spark? But she shook it off. If confrontation had lit a fire in her, perhaps this was merely another challenge to rise above. After wrapping up with her last customer of the day, Sarah approached Tom, confidence radiating from her. Curious to hear any of the stories from today? He met her gaze with a half smirk, folding his arms across his chest. "And what's that gonna do? Do you think it changes any of your realities?" With a surge of determination, she pressed on. "It might not change the world, but it certainly can change ours. Each story matters. They open doors to understanding." The slight flicker of intrigue in his eyes didn't escape her notice. Perhaps she could reach him. "You say it's just stories, but you've always been so quick to dismiss. It's about shared experiences, something we hardly cultivate today. You might discover something worthwhile if you actually listen." For a brief moment, silence enveloped them. Sarah felt the weight of her words settle heavily upon him, as if unearthing something profound inside. It was no longer just about proving herself. It was an olive branch, a bridge spanning their differences. What began as a simple challenge had morphed into a shared journey. Then, without warning, Tom's expression softened. "Maybe you're not as naive as I thought," he muttered, a grudging respect creeping into his tone. Her heart raced. Was this the breakthrough she had yearned for? Before she could fully process the moment, an older gentleman at the bar interrupted, waving a napkin with his number scrawled across it. "I want to talk to you about sponsoring something, a project that could really make an impact." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Could she actually channel her passion for stories into something larger? The seed had been planted, but would it blossom? Tom's jaw clenched as he watched the interaction, a haze of disbelief washing over his features. For once, the smugness was absent from his posture, and in its place there lingered a palpable tension, uncertainty mingled with intrigue. Sarah realized that not only was her journey potentially unfolding before her eyes, but it was also beginning to navigate the dynamics between her and Tom. The stakes had shifted, igniting a deeper conflict beneath the surface. What lay ahead? Would the promise of a larger endeavor shatter the doubts of the past, or would it refrain from taking root? Then, without warning, Tom's expression softened. "Maybe you're not as naive as I thought," he muttered, a grudging respect creeping into his tone. Her heart raced. Was this the breakthrough she had yearned for? Before she could fully process the moment, an older gentleman at the bar interrupted, waving a napkin with his numbers scrawled across it. "I want to talk to you about sponsoring something, a project that could really make an impact." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Could she actually channel her passion for stories into something larger? The seed had been planted, but would it blossom? Tom's jaw clenched as he watched the interaction, a haze of disbelief washing over his features. For once, the smugness was absent from his posture, and in its place there lingered a palpable tension, uncertainty mingled with intrigue. Sarah realized that not only was her journey potentially unfolding before her eyes, but it was also beginning to navigate the dynamics between her and Tom. The stakes had shifted, igniting a deeper conflict beneath the surface. What lay ahead? Would the promise of a larger endeavor shatter the doubts of the past, or would it refrain from taking root? As Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle around her, she understood the challenge had just begun. What decisions awaited her on this new path? With newfound resolve, she prepared to steer her own fate, acutely aware of the battle ahead. The following day dawned with a bright hue, an uncharacteristically vivid shade that beckoned Sarah to embrace the possibilities. The diner bustled around her, the familiar sounds of clinking dishes and chatter inducing a sense of comfort. Yet beneath it all, a gnawing anticipation lurked, a palpable tension promising change. As she wiped down the counter, her mind often drifted back to the older gentleman and his proposition. A project to make an impact? Suddenly, the intensity of this question gripped her thoughts. It was more than a mere invitation. It was a challenge to carve out her own space in a world that seemed to dismiss the significance of stories. Excitement fluttered within her, mingled with fear of the unknown. "Ready for another day of collecting stories?" a colleague teased as she poured a cup of coffee. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her words brushing off the apprehension like morning dew. A cycle of routine filled her day, yet the encounters felt charged with newfound purpose. Each conversation threaded hope into the fabric of her ambitions, and with every story, her confidence grew. She felt like a sculptor, sharpening her tools, preparing to carve out a new reality from the block of stone that was her old life. However, the specter of Tom lingered like a shadow, a constant reminder of the conflict stirring within her. As customers streamed in, she caught glimpses of him at the far end of the counter, his brow often furrowed in contemplation, a man teetering between skepticism and curiosity. She couldn't deny the magnetic pull his presence exerted. Deciding to act on her conviction, she approached him one afternoon after the rush, her heart pounding with the decision. "Can we talk?" Tom looked up, surprise etched on his features, but he nodded. "Sure, what's on your mind?" The words tumbled out, each sentence battling the hesitation within. "I know we see things differently, but I think there's something important we could achieve together. Your experience in the business world could merge with these stories I'm collecting." He leaned back, crossing his arms, a defensive posture she was becoming familiar with. "And what makes you think it's worth my time?" "Because stories connect us. They create empathy, understanding. Imagine if we could weave those stories into something that provokes thought, that makes people reconsider how they view others," she urged, passion fueling her voice. Tom leaned forward, intrigued. "So this project, what exactly are you envisioning?" As she recounted her vision, she observed the flickers of interest dancing across his features. "A series of workshops where people can come together, share their stories, and then we could compile them into a community publication or even a fundraiser," she suggested, her words flowing with purpose. For a moment, she perceived vulnerability in his gaze, barely there but palpable. "You really think people would care?" he asked, a subtle challenge lingering behind the question.
Doubt wove itself into uncertainty, casting shadows even as light emerged. Sarah took a breath, feeding on that uncertainty. I think they would. I believe people are longing for connection, something authentic. If we present it in the right way, we can show them their struggles aren't isolated. Silence nestled between them, thick as fog, and yet it held an exhilarating tension. I'd need to see a solid plan, he finally said, his tone indicating a flicker of begrudging respect. Each word felt like a small victory. Sarah's heart raced with eagerness and apprehension. I'll gather more details and come back to you, she assured, her voice steady. As she walked away, her pulse quickened. The encounter fueled a fiery resolve within her, igniting ambitions she dared not acknowledge before. She had taken a step, and while not a full leap, it propelled her forward. Yet, amidst the thrill of progress, doubt clawed at the edges of her mind. Could she truly bridge the chasm between them? Would he ever see the value of her vision as more than just naive idealism? With the weight of her aspirations heavy in her chest, an electric uncertainty buzzed through her. Challenges loomed on the horizon, demanding to be faced. As she glanced back at Tom, she knew this was just the beginning. What awaited her next? Would she prevail in engaging him further, or would his doubts stifle her passion entirely? The path ahead stretched uncertainly, begging her to uncover the next significant choice that could change everything. Days turned into a whirlwind of activity as Sarah propelled herself into the heart of her vision, the intersection of stories and community. The diner had transformed into a buzzing hub, a sanctuary for voices longing to be heard. Each conversation collected felt like laying bricks for an unshakable foundation. With quiet determination, she began refining her proposal for the community project, a mosaic of personal narratives stitched together, revealing a tapestry of resilience. What had started as a timid exploration morphed into a full-fledged plan, an ambition that demanded existence beyond the diner's walls. "Hey, Sarah," Alex called, entering with a fresh burst of energy as usual. "How's the project coming along?" "It's alive and growing," she beamed, pride spiraling through her. "But I need to present it in a way that engages Tom. I want to convince him that intersecting stories can yield real results, not just fluff." "The skeptic," he smirked knowingly. "That might be your toughest sell. You need a strong pitch." She nodded. It wasn't just about the plan anymore. It was about showing him the significance behind it. The tales from patrons were woven into a larger narrative, resonating deep within her, echoing the very essence of community. It's more than just selling a concept, it's about leading a change. A glimmer of realization struck her. Sarah was no longer the waitress cradling her tray. She was a storyteller, a leader, the catalyst for transformation. Yet the shadows of uncertainty about confronting Tom remained. When she finally sat down to deliberate the details of her pitch, the thought of Tom's acerbic wit lingered heavily on her mind, inspiring both fear and excitement. Could she sway his cold outlook into understanding? Her heart raced at the thought of attempting to breach his fortress of skepticism. It was time to act. After closing hours one evening, Sarah approached Tom at the counter, where he remained a solitary figure, contemplative, almost pensive. "Tom," she started, a whirlpool of emotions collecting in her stomach. "I'd like to share the plans for the storytelling project. Can we discuss it?" He met her gaze briefly, the usual wall of indifference flickering with a touch of intrigue. "Fine, but make it quick," he replied, giving her the impetus to move forward. With unwavering focus, she launched into her proposal, presenting the intricacies of her vision. The words flowed, each one knotting together a vision of community impact, bound by shared narratives. She highlighted the significance of shared struggles, forming connections, and ultimately fostering an environment where empathy flourished. "I believe people crave being seen, heard, and understood," she asserted, her eyes meeting his with passion. "If we can bridge the divide, we can really make a difference."
This isn't about collecting stories, it's about building humanity back into our community. Tom's expression softened, but the skepticism still anchored his demeanor. So you think you can lead this, and that I should just hop on board? I think we need a partnership, she pressed on, tilting her chin upward with newfound confidence, despite the familiar doubt that began to creep in. Your expertise and guidance mixed with the raw authenticity of their stories could create something truly special. The silence that enveloped them felt charged, brimming with opportunity. She sensed the weight of the moment, where visions collided with reality. "All right," he finally relented, his tone surprisingly measured. "I'll think about it, but you'd better bring something substantial to the table to support your claims." Her heart soared, the heaviness in her chest substituting for hope. This was a victory. She had verified her capability to confront Tom, feed her aspirations, and weave her sense of identity into the fabric of her community. Over the following weeks, momentum propelled her with each step as Sarah prepared for the project's launch. Grasping the reins of leadership further solidified her confidence. She carved through hesitation and transformed potential into purpose. Engaging patrons became second nature. Her presence emanated reassurance, inviting their stories to flourish. The diner buzzed with anticipation, excitement buzzing in the air as the inaugural story night approached. "Don't forget to breathe," Alex chimed, sensing her mounting nerves as they set up the furniture for the night. Her heart raced as anticipation collided with fear, a palpable blend of excitement and uncertainty. When the evening finally arrived, the diner brimmed with patrons uniting to share their stories. At that moment, Sarah caught sight of Tom, leaning against the counter, arms folded but intrigued, an observer drawn into the unfolding experience. "Tonight's the night!" Alex exclaimed, breaking Sarah from her reverie. Cycling through a mixture of emotions, she glanced at the room filled with faces, an array of stories ready to emerge, brimming with possibility. Each heartbeat amplified her confidence, running parallel to the vulnerability they displayed. As the first storyteller approached the makeshift podium, a newfound electric energy charged the air. Sarah's determination solidified. She was no longer a passive spectator. She was nurtured by their willingness to share, a pivotal moment that tied them together through struggle and hope. With each story shared, she watched as barriers melted away. Sniffles mingled with laughter, and tears intertwined with applause. Tom leaned in, visibly moved, each expression sharpening the connection between them, progress materializing amid the vibrant hum of humanity. As the last storyteller shared, an overwhelming warmth surged through the diner, proof of their unity echoing in the silence that followed. "Thank you," Sarah spoke softly, her voice cracking from emotion, but rippling with strength. "We are stronger together, forged by our stories, and this is just the beginning." Upon turning to catch Tom's gaze, she found his expression softened, the previous skepticism replaced by something new. "You really did it," he murmured, the faintest hint of admiration sneaking in. In that moment, she felt triumphant. She had not just conquered doubt, she had ushered in a wave of connection that clamored for authenticity. Sarah stepped into her new reality. She had transformed her dreams into actions, wielded her voice as a formidable force, and grown into a leader who catalyzed change. As the diner lingered in the post-story night afterglow, she understood clearly. The journey had powerful implications that stretched beyond mere storytelling. It was about reclaiming power, dignity, and solidarity through real narratives. With each shared experience, she had gained not just self-respect, but recognition. She now stood alongside Tom, equal collaborators bound by a commitment to inspire. The uncertain road ahead felt navigable. It unfolded from this pivotal moment toward an emerging chapter saturated with promise. Together, they would explore not just the power of stories, but the strength that thrived within community. A journey waiting to be written, story by story. For this was more than a diner, it was a sanctuary for change, where vulnerability and authenticity reigned supreme. Now was the moment for the audience to dive deeper and embrace the journey of personal growth. To keep witnessing inspiring stories that define human experience, you need to subscribe now. Don't let this moment pass you by. This is the moment to show your support and leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Join the conversation, comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about what's unfolded, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformative conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.